I wanted to welcome all of you guys to this sort of workshop that we have today. It's called Skills for Banking Like a Pro. And we're going to kind of talk about the basics of banking, which are savings accounts, checking accounts, bonds, and really anything that the bank can help you with. And then we're going to kind of dive a bit more deeper into what actually to do when you're at a bank, or how to fill up banking deposit slips, and how to kind of read a check, and the most basic things you might need in order to go to the bank and actually feel confident stepping into it. So if you have any questions, always feel free to go down on the chat. And then I also have Lexi with me that's going to be posting links to anything related to banking, as well as anything relating to the resources that we have here at DePaul University to help you guys with these things. And you guys see my chat. Cool. All right, so we're going to start. So for our agenda, I am going to also drop down the link for check-in. This is just for you guys to actually check into this event, get the price you guys want. And then we're going to go over what we're going to do today. So the first thing is just a banking overview. Again, saying about what are checking accounts, savings accounts, just the basics of why banks exist and why you should invest in taking the time to open a banking account. Going to the basics, and then we're going to talk a little bit about online versus in-person banks. I know that right now during this time we have banks that are completely online, and talking a bit more about what that means for your money and security wise. And then we're going to go a bit more into the steps of how to actually open an account, and finally over the different kind of transactions you can do at a bank. So for your reference, I will also drop down the link to check in for anybody who doesn't want to scan the QR code there. Banking overview of why you guys should choose banking. Well, banks are financial institutions that give out loans as well as bonds. And bonds are kind of basically you basically are lending the bank money, and then they are promising you to pay you back that same money that you lend them along with interest on it. So you might make a bond that's 10 years, 5 years, and then based on whatever money you put in today, after that time expires, you'll get back your money, your initial principal, what you actually gave them, plus interest that accumulated during that time. And it can be fixed interest, so it can be, every year you get 20% or 5% back, or it can be something variable. So it depends on every year, it might change. But overall, it's a secure way to lend your money to the bank, and then they give you back more money than what you initially put down. They also offer checking accounts and savings accounts, as well as money market accounts, all different accounts that have different sort of interest attached to them, as well as different rules that basically make you either grow your money, or they help you get better interest for your money, so you can do different transactions without actually feeling like it's not secure. So they make money again off of charging interest on the loans that they give out, and this interest can be very high or low. It compares to other banks and what really they're specializing in, whether they're giving you a loan for example, you want to buy a house, so they give you a loan, or whether it's again through bonds or some other way that they get money off that loans that they give you. And the reason why banking is a good idea is because it's a very secure way to keep your money in a place, rather than keeping your money like in your house or under your couch or any other place you might think is safe. It's actually a very secure way to keeping it, because they are insured by the federal government. And so as long as you have below a certain credit limit or certain limit in the bank, your money will be secure. Even if it gets robbed or something, your money will always be secure. It's also a very cheap way. Usually you don't have to pay for a banking account unless it's a bank that does charge a yearly or a monthly rate. It's very convenient because there's also banks almost everywhere, and so you can get your money off of a bank that maybe is close to you, or an online bank that offers a lot of good rates but isn't really physical somewhere. So it's very convenient for you to use it. So now going into savings versus checking, we're going to talk about the pros and the cons, as well as some differences. So for savings accounts, I want you guys to think about savings as almost this long-term growth idea. So it's usually this account where you put money in there, and it usually stays for long-term goals. So if you want to go on a vacation, if you're trying to go to grad school, if you want to save money for a car or a house, there's a kind of account where you want to put money in there that's going to stay there for a long time. There's usually little to no stress about this account because usually they don't have any strings attached to them. It's not like, you have to deposit at least this many times to keep your account open, or you have to have at least a minimum balance of $1 in there. Usually this is an account where you just put money in there and it stays for a long time. It does have interest rates. They can depend on banks. Some of them might be the current rate, which is about like 0.01, I think, percent, which is almost gonna be about like 13 pennies in there. But some of them have really good interest rates. It just depends on the bank that you find and what interest you want for your account. The only bad side of savings account is that they have no debit card, no checkbook, and also no ATM access. Again, because this is not the kind of account where you do constant transactions. This is the account where you usually just save your money in one place and then it kind of grows. Checking account, on the other hand, is the other side. So it's not really about putting money in there that stays for a long time. This is the kind of account where you want to buy things on Amazon, or you want to buy things on, let's say, like at the store. This kind of account where you're constantly putting money in and you're putting money out. It's more of a transaction kind of account. So it can be very easy to mishandle it if you don't really know how much money you have in your account. If you're having a lot of pending transactions, you have to kind of always keep track of what you're doing and how much money you have in there, because some banks do have, for example, a minimum deposit. So you have to at least have at all times $20 in your account. You always want to make sure you don't add on more fees by not meeting those requirements. So there are just some very kind of differences between the different accounts. You can always have one or the other or both. I personally have both accounts just because I have different goals. One where I can just spend money for my daily needs, and one where I'm just keeping it just for long-term goals. Now, when it comes to online versus in person, there are some pros and some cons, as well as some differences. So for online banking, some banks might have e-banking, which is they have personal branches, so they have in-person branches you can kind of go to for anything, but they also have the e-banking option. I'm talking here about online banks that are completely online. So they might have one or two locations in the actual cities or the actual places physically, but otherwise they're completely online. The reason why they have higher interest rates is because of that fact that they don't have to pay for physical locational rates. So banks like, for example, Chase or other big banks, they have physical locations, but they have to pay money for those. They have to have a lot of fees, so they have to charge interest that's a bit lower because they can give out a lot of money to their customers. Online banks, on the other hand, have not attached those fees onto like their own business kind of procedures, and so they can offer customers a lot more higher rates. So while maybe at your personal bank you might have 0.01%, an online bank might offer you 5% of interest rate. So I would say that for at least savings accounts, if you're trying to get a highest interest rate, looking at online banks might be a great way to get that interest rate for your money. The only things that you might have to be cautious about is that there might be a few ATMs they associate themselves with. There might be a very few locations about where you can actually talk to an actual teller face to face about your issue, about whatever is going on with your account. And then your access to money can vary on your account type. So again, savings accounts, you might not have the need to constantly access your money, so it might be a great idea. But if you're having a checking account where you have to constantly be, writing checks or getting an ATM or using your card, and you constantly need to have access to your money, even if it's just cash, be mindful that there might not be a lot of locations you can actually do that with. Versus in person, they have lower interest rates again because they have physical locations, they have different fees they have to pay. But they have a lot of ATMs, a lot of locations you can go to. For maybe every corner you have a bank, or every city you have a bank that you can go to and have the branch. And it's also very quick access to your money. So between these pros and cons, kind of always be mindful about what you want and what's best for you. So that would be kind of my recommendation when you're trying to find your bank. Look at the accounts that they have, and then what you actually need out of the accounts. So now we're going to kind of go into the fun thing, which is opening an actual account. So what should you look for, and what do you actually need? So what you want to look for always is, like, if there's one thing you remember about this entire thing, is you want to make sure it's FDIC insured. That's because that's what makes your money secure. If it doesn't have that, I would really be cautious about it, just because it kind of shows that if your money is not secured up to $250,000, if it gets robbed or something happens, if the bank burns down, anything happens, your money might not be secured. So we always want to make sure that it's insured by the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation, just because that makes sure no matter what happens to the bank, no matter what happens, um, whatever money you have in your account is what money you're going to get returned. Like it's yours to keep. Nothing can make that not become yours. Next thing you want to do is just again branch locations. You want it close to you. You want to be like in walking distance. You don't mind not having a bank close to you. That kind of thing. Also look for waves or fees that can be waived. So let's say you use another bank's ATM, are they going to charge you for that? If, for example, you want a paper statement, are they going to charge you for that? If you have a very low balance or you don't have a penny in your account, are they going to charge you for that? If you're going to go travel internationally and you want to convert US dollars to like pesos, are they going to charge you for that? Always look at those little perks you might need. I'm an avid traveler, at least before COVID, so I constantly look for banks that at least gave me a debit card that would not charge you for converting US dollars to another currency. Just kind of keep in mind what you want and what you need, and make sure your bank kind of fits somewhere in that category. Also look at the low minimum balances. So you have a penny in there, should you have at least $20? Make sure you know what the minimum balance should be in your account at all times. So no matter what you're doing, you're not going to be charged for having less than that. And then always again look for high interest rates. Those are always like great to have, as well as any online banking options. So right now during COVID, I don't really like going inside the bank myself. So I like to have any bill pays, mobile deposits, anything I can do online. Makes my life a lot more easier as a student. And during this time, just makes my life a lot more easier. So if your bank offers, again, any online banking options where you can still have a very physical location you can go to for any, things happen that you might need to talk to an actual banker, but you also have the option of being online if you choose to. Yes. So for foreign fees, sometimes when you travel to another country, let's say they don't use the US dollar, they use their own currency. When you use your debit card for an ATM to just, convert the money that way, sometimes you get charged for that, even if you use your credit card or your debit card. I found a bank that didn't do that. So when I used my money to convert it to like pesos in Mexico, when I went to Mexico, I converted it to their currency just because sometimes it becomes a bit more cheaper for me to use their currency instead of dollars. Um, my bank didn't charge me that. So when I used to convert money, they didn't charge me that fee. And a lot of different banks I was looking at, they charged you like, oh, that's charge. We can't reimburse you that charge. So if when everything goes back to normal in a way, if you are traveling and that's important to you, making sure you kind of know what those restrictions are on your account on the card can really help you. That's actually a very great question. For the name of the bank, I don't want to promote anything right now. But I would say if you go to Bankrate, which I think Lexi can definitely drop that link, it has a lot of different bank names on there. And again, if you set up an appointment with me, I would be more than happy just to have a conversation with you. But even if you just Google online, like just different types of things that you want a bank to have, that gives you an entire list of banks that can work for you, especially if it's something that's closer to me where I live right now versus somewhere where maybe it's close to where you live. That's a great question. All right, I'm going to move on now. So what you actually need, you need three things when you open a bank account. So if you walk inside of a bank or you want to have a bank account, these are the three things you should need, and you should have in your hand. If you have these things, you're good to go. The first is just personal identification. This is an ID, driver's license, a passport for and even if you're not a U.S. citizen, a passport of your what country you are from, and then also if you are not a U.S. citizen, you can also use your individual taxpayer identification number or your ITIN number, and all of those work perfectly just to basically identify that you are who you say you are. So if I'm saying I'm Cindy, I have my ID that shows I'm Cindy, I'm good to go. The next thing you have to have is your proof of residency. So an ID again that kind of shows your address or a utility bill. Also, if you're like, let's say you're barely renting a place, you have a new lease, that also works just fine. Just somewhere that just says that you live there, you're a resident there, you're good to go. And then the last thing is just the money to deposit for your account. So what you're actually going to be using to fund your account. Let's say I want to open a savings account, right? They're like, okay, that's great. You want to open an account, you have your ID, you have, something that says that you live, where you live. And the last thing that they need at least is money that shows that you can actually open the account. So even if it's like $10 that you can, have in cash, if you just got paid a check, you want to deposit that check. If you have an account somewhere else, but you're opening an account in a new bank, you can just say, I'm going to use that account to fund this one. So, if I want to open like a savings account or you have a checking account with that bank, I can always just say, you know what, I already have a bank an account here. I just want to use some of that money to fund this new one. So just anything that kind of you can actually open the account with cash or any funds you have. Any questions about this one? I know the last bullet can be a little bit hard. Yeah. So as long as you show that they're your parents or something, you can always do that. So yeah, like for example, for me, I had my ID, I had my passport here that kind of showed a bit like my city where I lived. But yeah, the bill of your parents, that's fine too. Just anything that kind of shows that you are resident there. So you're not saying like, oh, I want to open an account, I don't know, like another country or something, you're not a resident there. Just making sure that you are basically, it's just another way of identifying that you are really who you say you are and that you're not like trying to rob or you're not trying to do anything like sneaky or anything like that. But yeah, I guess it'll be fine. And there's also if you also want an account where it's not just you yourself and you can also have accounts where it's two people in your account. So for example, I have my mom on my account, so we're both like people who can access money. So in case I ever get sick or I need money urgently and I'm not in the country, she can always deposit money in my account because she's also an authorized user on it. So that's also an option for that. I would say you have to check with your you would have to check with the bank, but most banks, at least if they're national banks, they should just be fine because they have branches in other states. Just so you can use, I can use my bank in like another state because they have branches everywhere. Just kind of always be mindful of that when you're looking that online, but always asking the banker before you go into that bank. That also works just fine. Yeah, no problem, no problem. These are actually great questions. So now the transaction types. So what can a bank actually do for you? I always want to point this out because I think people always kind of freak out. You don't have to memorize your banking account because I have like 3 and I have never memorized any of the numbers. As long as you have your ID, the bankers and tellers can always look up anything. So I used to be a teller, so people always come to me and just show me their ID, and then I would always look up their account number for them. Especially if you have different accounts, or as you get older, you have different banks and different accounts. It can be a bit more like hectic. So as long as you show up your ID or anything that kind of proves that you are, they can always look up your account number. So the first thing that they do is they do deposits. So they usually just need your account number for that, and then an ID if you want to get cash back. So let's say you want to deposit a check, but you're like, okay, I want to get $50 off of the check, right? That's technically cash back. So what you're gonna do is we'll do this later on, but they'll deposit the rest of the amount, but then for cash back, they'll ask you for your ID just to confirm that that check is your check and you can technically get money off that check. Next things are withdrawals, and withdrawals is just taking money out of your account. And for that, you definitely need your ID and you need your account number. So just to make sure again that this account belongs to you and you can actually take away money from this account. Next things are transfers, and transfers can be from the same bank or from a third party. And what I mean is, let's say you have 2 accounts at the same bank and you want to just move money from one account to the other account. That's a transfer. You can do that easily. The next thing you have to do is if it's a third party. So let's say you have one bank account here in bank A and one bank account in bank C. That's a third party transfer. So you want to take money from one account to another account from different banks. You can do that, but again, that's just a different transaction. The next thing people can banks can do is the currency exchange. So sometimes you can bring this depends again on your bank what currency they accept. But when I came back from my travels, I had some extra money that doesn't work here, so I'm like, okay, I need money that's actually U.S. dollars. So I went to my bank and they did that for me. They changed my bills from the currency that I had from abroad to U.S. dollars. And then my bank also, at least some banks actually also do coin exchange where you can take, like your piggy bank of just full with pennies and dimes and quarters, and they exchange it to actual bills you can have. And sometimes you can also just deposit that straight to your account or get it physical cash. So I have like a piggy bank that I have just a bunch of dimes and stuff in there, and I just sometimes go to the bank and exchange it for cash. And then the last thing is just cashing your checks. So you just want to just, get money and you just got paid, you can just cash your check and they'll do that for you. So that's just kind of some things that banks do. Some banks also offer safe deposit boxes, and those are just basically a safe, secure little box you get where you can store your family valuables, money, documents, anything basically. You usually pay like a monthly charge on it, but that's another option that they also offer, just so they can kind of keep it in their vault, and it be secure that way. So yeah. So now that we kind of know the basic transactions, I want to kind of practice how to fill out the actual slips you might see at banks. So we're gonna just kind of we're gonna fill out a deposit slip with me, and I'm gonna use kind of my information to help you guys with that. So usually when we want to have a bank, this is usually what a bank slip will look like. It's the pink ones, that's the deposit ones. I've helped many people with these before in my actual job, so I definitely don't think people should feel scared or intimidated by filling these out, but just in case you guys want some information of how to do that, we'll do this here. So the first thing you're going to need, again, is you're going to need an account number, which can always be looked up if you don't know it, and then you're going to need your ID if you want any cash back. So first thing you want to do is when you're depositing something is you want to check if it's a checking or savings account. This is just another thing that Chase kind of offers, but for our purposes, we're going to say this is a checking account. We're going to put today's date, and then we're also going to put in our name. So my name is Cindy, so that's going to be that. When you're going to deposit cash, that means you have physical cash with you, so actual cash bills. So let's say we have $40 cash, right? I always like to put these little lines at the end, just because I was always kind of taught that in case somebody ever tried to like steal money from you or make you add more money into it, that wouldn't happen. I've never seen it actually happen. That's how I was raised to do it. So I always just have that habit of whether I'm depositing something or withdrawing something, just putting those little lines so people know that's how much I actually meant to deposit, nothing more in case something else was added. And then let's say I want to also deposit a check. So then that goes the amount of that. And then what we do is, with nothing else is happening, we put the total. Now let's say you have different multiple checks. I like to just add them all together in one column, but there's also on the back different columns that kind of you can separate each check to check. And the reason why they do that is because when people scan these deposit slips, they create a virtual scan of it. So let's say if, for example, you find out that somebody deposited into your account and you don't know where it came from, this tells you exactly what happened. So that's just the total of that. And then what we do is, let's say I want $100 cash back. So I want of that check I got, I want to have $100 cash. So then we're going to put that as cash back, which means I need my ID to show that, you know what, this is my check, this is my money, I just want the money back. You know, maybe I want it in 50s or 20s. And so at the total, after we basically got our subtotal, we subtracted the cash back that we actually wanted. The total that we're actually going to deposit is for $40. Because I want cash back, I have to sign this deposit, basically saying, yes, I did deposit the check, I did deposit the cash, and I did want cash back. And then finally, we have my account number, which can be given to me by the teller. So you only sign it when you want cash back. You don't have to sign this if you're only depositing. Again, anybody can deposit to your account, so you don't need an ID if you're just depositing. I can deposit into my friend's account because I want to give her money, that's fine. What you do need, however, is if I'm going to get cash back from the deposit, I need to show my ID. Withdraw slip as well. Kind of just analyzing what this is. We have the date that goes right up there. We have the name of the person that is withdrawing. So that will be my name in the example. We have the amount in words. So if it's $50, you want to make sure that's what it says in case sometimes the numbers are a bit illegible. We have the amount. We have the account of the money that's going to be taken out. And then we have the person that's actually going to be withdrawing it. So now when we want to get into a check, we have the date that is written. We have the person that's going to be receiving the check. So that's going to be, for example, if I'm going to pay my bill, right? That will be the name of the bill. We have the amount of the check as well as the number written in words. Then we have the notes. For example, if I want to say this is, you know, my bill payment, I will put their bill, or here, donation. So I know very quickly why did I withdraw money from the account? What was that check for? And then we have the signature of the person that's going to be giving the check. So, for example, if we're going to write a check with me, we will have the date. you would have, let's say, an apartment place in Chicago. Let's say I rent an apartment. This is my monthly payment, and I pay that much for my rent. Right? The check number, which is usually the one up there, but that's the amount inward, $600 and 22 cents or 52 cents. My signature, because I'm the one that's writing the check, and then that's my memo. So again, pay to the order up is the actual place. It's not me. So another keyword, just basically those numbers on the top just mean that's your check number. At the bottom, that's your routing number, and that identifies your bank. So anybody ever asks, what's your routing number? Your own check tells you at the bottom of those numbers what your bank number is. Basically, kind of just that's basically the ID of your bank. So as long as you put that in, they know what bank you're banking with. That set of numbers then is your actual account number. So that way you always know when you're writing a check what account number you're writing from. So that's kind of how a check works and how you can get information from it. So if you ever if they ever ask you for your banking information, you can get your own check if you have a checking book, and then go those two numbers, and that should be good to go. So just a small recap. We found out that banks are safe, they're cheap, and they're convenient. You can deposit, withdraw, get transfers, currency exchange, you can even cash checks. There's online banks as well as physical banks. Savings accounts are to grow your money. Checkings are for transactions. Always make sure that FDIC approved no matter what. If you see that, you're good to go. If you don't see that, it's a very red flag. I will be very cautious to even have an account with them. Low fees is what we want. Always make sure you have an ID or any sort of ID. And for any resources, feel free to always scan this barcode, and leads you right into our financial fitness website where you can learn a lot more about banking. Talk to me personally about it. If you have any more questions, you can kind of even go on a step-by-step basis about what would be best for you. And then for any questions, again, always feel free to drop them on the chat. You guys have done a great job. And so I want to thank you guys for your time. And we're right on mark 2, so I'm finished right on time. I know I went a bit fast at the end, but again, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me or anybody in the financial fitness team. And again, this is the checking code for anybody who came in late. I will also drop it again on the chat, so you guys have it if you have not checked in yet. But yeah,